Welcome back. In this last video, for this unit, we're going to talk about perception. If you remember how we defined sensation and perception in the first video, we said sensation is mere capture of information by your sense organs. The perception is interpreting part of the sense information by the brain. The question is, what do we interpret an object as? Keep in mind, it equally applies to words. So you do fixation here, and before you go to saccade with another fixation, you perceive the printed letters as, that's right, as words. I'm going to show you in the next slide a picture of something, and I want you to identify it as quickly as possible and say out loud what it is. Are you ready? Okay, what is it? That's right, you might have said a puppy or a dog or a beagle. Well, this particular thing that consciously happened when you made a decision about what it is, that is perception. Perception is interpretation of an object as something. In this case, it's a dog. Perception is nothing but object identification, object recognition. In general terms, you can call it pattern recognition. You're identifying the pattern as dog, and that is perception. One more thing you need to understand here is this might not be the dog you have experienced in your life. Still, you're able to identify this new dog as a dog because we have concepts or categories based on our experiences. We have concepts of dogs. A dog is an animal with features. When you perceive a new dog, you're identifying this new dog as an instance of a bigger category of things called dogs. What is perception then? Perception is identifying something as something, identifying an object that you are looking at as an instance of a bigger category of things. It was quick, right? The moment you saw this picture, you said dog or puppy or a beagle. Perception is quick, even automatic, but it's not simple. It is a complex problem-solving process of identifying the object or a pattern. So we can define perception as interpreting an object as something, which is a complex problem-solving process of pattern recognition. So we define perception as identifying an object as an instance of a bigger category of things. Now, how do we perceive? What is the process of perception, and how do we interpret something as something? Well, there are several theories. We talk about a few here. First one is Gestalt principles. The second one is template approach, and the third one is feature detection or feature analysis approach. These are the classic theories of perception. You had already learned a lot about Gestalt principles in your Intro to Psych class. I'm going to quickly talk about some principles of Gestalt, not in detail. The first theory is good in explaining how we interpret, identify objects that are ambiguous, not clear, whereas the other two approaches better explain objects that are non-ambiguous, unambiguous, clear. Like in this case, you can identify this as a puppy. This identification can be explained by these two theories. Gestalt principles are more applicable when objects are ambiguous. First, we'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about these two theories. Gestalt principles. The first one is the figure ground principle. What do you see here? Of course, FedEx. But do you see an arrow mark? You don't see it yet? Well, here it is. Whether or not you see an arrow depends on what you're making as a figure, the foreground, and what you're making as a ground, which is background. So if you make white as the background, then you can't see the arrow. But the moment you make white foreground or figure and the rest background, that's when you see it. The main principle is the figure ground principle. According to this, you perceive an ambiguous structure like this, which depends on what you make it to be the figure and background. Let's look at another example here. What do you see here? Well, you might have seen this picture several times, right? You see either a vase or two faces depending on what you make out to be the foreground or the figure and what you make out to be the background. Now, if you make the background to be white, what do you see? Well, you see two faces. If you make black as a background, you see the vase. Good job. This is a basic principle of Gestalt. Then we have a set of grouping principles. There are a lot of them. I'm just going to talk about a few here. What do you see here? A dog. Is it really a dog? It's not the complete picture of a dog, though. The idea here is you assume things are closed. You group objects and assume things are closed. Then there are other things like proximity. What do you see here? Well, people usually see a square of dots. The principle here is you group things based on similarity. You think they all belong to one unit. You say it's a square of dots. So another is continuity. For example, if I show you like here, what do you see? People usually say one curved line and one straight line. It could also be four different lines. two curvy lines, and two. So we assume things are continuous. So that's continuity principle. We'll move on to the other two theories, which is applicable when the objects are not ambiguous. Okay. When the objects are clear, you can explain that using template approach, feature detection, or feature analysis approach. First, we'll talk about the template approach. According to template approach, like a stencil has a model of alphabets or numbers. According to template approach, our mind has stored models of fully categorizable objects. Model for dog, alphabets, you have models for different things. So when you encounter a new object, the way you recognize this as belonging to a category of things is by trying to fit this new object with the stored model you have of the class of objects that you think this belongs to. In other words, you take the whole object and compare it with the stored model you have. So the way to identify this is by fitting this particular object within the stored model, the stencil of this object. And that's how you recognize this object as A. The problem with this approach is it's not economical. Think about it. You should have templates for different versions of just one object. We can write A like this. We have different versions of writing A. So you should have hundreds of different stencils. It would take forever to compare one object with hundreds of models of this given object, which again takes a lot of time. So although it's a simple explanation, it gives a simple explanation, it's not economical. On the next slide, we'll talk about the last model, the feature detection approach. There are several theories within this model. The basic idea of these theories is that as opposed to the template model where you're comparing the entire object with the stored model of that object, you only compare or identify individual features. What does it mean? According to the feature detection model, object can be divided into its component features called primary features. These are basic features like a square, triangle, circle, an edge, a corner, basic patterns. Pattern recognition then is recognizing the individual features of the object. Once you match these features and identify from your mind what these features are, then perception is matching what objects in your mind has these features. So you're not comparing the entire object, you're identifying individual components. Then you put together by identifying objects that have these features. One example of this model is Selfridge theory of pandemonium, or pandemonium model. The word pandemonium here is used to dramatize what might be happening in our mind when we detect an object. According to this model, there are 4 different kinds of demons. A demon is the mental process. You have image demon, feature demons, cognitive demons, and decision demons. These demons are different processes. Let's say you're looking at letter B. Image demon will capture the image of it. There are several feature demons. There's a feature for vertical line, horizontal line, there's a feature for zero, there's a feature for a parenthesis, one for acute line, one for a semicircle, so on and so forth. When the image demon captures letter B, feature demons shout. The demons that have any of the features listed within this will shout. For example, the vertical demon will shout because there is a vertical feature in it. 2 of these will also shout because there are 2 semicircles, right? The next layer of demons is the cognitive demons, which are the actual representations of the objects you have, B, D, P, and all the alphabets you have. All these cognitive demons that have at least 2 features combined within them shout. For example, B will shout because it has all the features. There's vertical line. What are the ones that are shouting here? Vertical line and semicircles. So B will shout. D also has 1 vertical line and 1 semicircle. It will also shout. P will also shout because there's 1 vertical line, but the one that shouts the loudest, cognitive demon, is B because it has all the features. The decision demon will listen to these particular sounds and pick that sound that's the loudest. In this case, it is D. So the decision demon means a decision. It is just an analogy to give you an idea. There are no real demons in your head. Well, this brings us to the end of this unit on perception. I hope you liked it. Stay tuned. Have fun learning.